Welcome to Sinister Memory. If you're new here, subscribe now and let us know in the comments where you're listening to this story. Let's get to today's story. The Massachusetts State Archives received the leather-bound journal on a rain-soaked morning in October 1952, delivered by a trembling elderly woman who claimed it had belonged to her late grandfather, Dr. Edmund Ashford. The woman, Mrs. Catherine Pemberton, insisted the journal contained records that should never have been written down, but felt compelled to surrender it to proper authorities before her own death. She departed immediately after the delivery, refusing to provide further details or contact information. Dr. Ashford had served as the regional physician for the rural townships surrounding Hartwell, Massachusetts, during the early 1900s. His meticulous documentation of medical cases had earned him recognition among his peers, yet this particular journal bore no resemblance to his typically clinical reports. The entries, written in increasingly erratic handwriting, chronicled events that challenged the boundaries of medical understanding and rational explanation. The journal's first entry, dated July 3, 1904, described Dr. Ashford's initial summons to the Hartwell estate. The property, situated on nearly 200 acres of dense woodland 30 miles west of Boston, had belonged to the Hartwell family for 3 generations. Cornelius Hartwell, the current patriarch, had inherited both the estate and a considerable fortune derived from textile manufacturing. At 47 years of age, he was known throughout the region as a reserved but respectable gentleman who conducted his business affairs with unwavering precision. What distinguished Cornelius from other men of his social standing was his peculiar matrimonial history. Over the span of 15 years, he had married 5 different women, each union ending not in death or divorce, but in the complete mental collapse of his wives. The first, Margaret Thornfield, had been committed to the Danvers State Hospital in 1891, after being found wandering the estate grounds in her nightgown, speaking in languages that no scholar could identify. The second, Eleanor Ashworth, had suffered a similar fate 3 years later, discovered in the estate's library attempting to consume pages from ancient texts while muttering incomprehensible phrases. The pattern continued with devastating consistency. Sarah Caldwell, the third wife, had been institutionalized in 1897 after developing an obsession with mirrors, spending entire days staring at her reflection while claiming to see others looking back. Victoria Mansfield, the fourth, had succumbed to madness in 1901, found by servants in the estate's cellar, frantically digging at the stone foundation with her bare hands until her fingernails were torn away. By 1904, Cornelius had recently married his 5th wife, Isabella Fairfax, a young woman of 23 whose beauty was matched only by her intelligence and strong will. The local community watched this union with a mixture of fascination and dread, wondering whether Isabella would prove different from her predecessors or fall victim to the same inexplicable curse that had claimed the others. Dr. Ashford's journal revealed that his initial visit to the estate had been requested not by Cornelius, but by Isabella herself. She had written to the physician, expressing concerns about her husband's behavior and requesting a confidential consultation. The letter, which Dr. Ashford had preserved between the journal's pages, was written in elegant script that betrayed no hint of the terror it contained. The estate itself, as described in the physician's notes, presented an imposing facade of Gothic Revival architecture. Tall windows stared out from the 3-story structure like hollow eyes, while elaborate stonework created shadows that seemed to shift and move even in broad daylight. The surrounding forest pressed close to the building, creating an atmosphere of isolation that felt both protective and suffocating. Upon his arrival, Dr. Ashford noted several peculiarities about the household staff. The servants moved through their duties with an efficiency that bordered on mechanical. rarely speaking and avoiding direct eye contact with visitors. When questioned about the previous wives, they would offer only vague responses before quickly changing the subject or excusing themselves from the conversation. Cornelius himself appeared to be a man of refined tastes and considerable education. His library contained volumes on subjects ranging from classical literature to obscure philosophical treatises. Yet Dr. Ashford observed an unsettling quality in the man's demeanor, a watchfulness that suggested he was constantly evaluating and measuring those around him. His pale blue eyes seemed to look through people rather than at them, as if searching for something hidden beneath the surface. The physician's first examination of Isabella revealed a woman in apparent good health, though she exhibited signs of chronic sleep deprivation and nervous tension. She spoke carefully, choosing her words with precision. Yet Dr. Ashford detected an underlying current of fear that she struggled to conceal. When asked directly about her concerns regarding her husband, Isabella would only say that things in this house are not as they appear, and that she feared she was beginning to understand why the others could not endure. The journal's first entry concluded with Dr. Ashford's decision to accept Isabella's request for ongoing consultations, though he admitted feeling an inexplicable sense of unease about the arrangement. Dr. Ashford's second visit to the Hartwell estate occurred 1 week later, on July 10th, 1904. His journal entry from that evening revealed a growing concern about Isabella's condition and an increasing curiosity about the circumstances surrounding the previous wives' mental deterioration. The physician had spent the intervening days researching the medical records of the 4 women who had been committed to various institutions throughout New England. The records painted a disturbing picture of systematic psychological decline. Each woman had exhibited similar symptoms during their final months at the estate. Severe insomnia, episodes of disorientation, claims of hearing voices or sounds that others could not perceive, and an obsessive preoccupation with specific areas of the house. Most troubling was the consistency of their delusions. Each woman had spoken of watching eyes and whispered instructions that seemed to emanate from the very walls of the estate. Margaret Thornfield's asylum records, obtained through Dr. Ashford's professional connections, described a woman who had once been known for her sharp intellect and social grace. During her confinement, she repeatedly drew intricate geometric patterns on any available surface, claiming they were maps that would help her find the way back. When questioned about the meaning of these drawings, she would only say that, "He showed me the paths between the rooms that don't exist." Eleanor Ashworth's case file contained similar references to architectural impossibilities. She had insisted that the Hartwell estate contained chambers that could not be accessed through conventional means, spaces that existed behind the mirrors and beneath the floors. Her attending physician had noted that she possessed detailed knowledge of the house's layout that extended far beyond what any resident should reasonably know, describing rooms and corridors that architectural plans did not support. Sarah Caldwell's obsession with mirrors had been documented extensively. Hospital staff reported that she would spend hours studying her reflection, often reaching toward the glass as if attempting to touch something on the other side. She claimed that the mirrors in the Hartwell estate were windows rather than reflective surfaces, and that through them she could observe the others who lived in the spaces between. Her final coherent statement before complete mental collapse was a warning that the reflections remember everything, even when we forget. Victoria Mansfield's case proved most disturbing of all. Her compulsive digging in the estate's cellar had been motivated by her belief that something was calling from below. She had told her physicians that the foundation stones were not solid, that they concealed passages leading to chambers where the previous occupants still resided. Her hands, permanently damaged from her frantic excavation attempts, bore scars that formed patterns remarkably similar to the geometric designs that Margaret Thornfield had obsessively drawn. During his second consultation with Isabella, Dr. Ashford observed subtle changes in her demeanor. She appeared more withdrawn than during their initial meeting, frequently glancing toward the windows as if expecting to see something in the surrounding forest. When questioned about her sleep patterns, she admitted to experiencing vivid dreams that felt more real than waking hours. These dreams, she explained, involved walking through versions of the house that contained additional rooms and corridors not present during daylight. Isabella's description of these nocturnal experiences bore an unsettling resemblance to the accounts provided by the previous wives. She spoke of hearing footsteps in empty hallways, of doors that opened onto spaces that should not exist, and of mirrors that reflected rooms different from the ones in which they hung. Most concerning was her growing conviction that she was not alone in the house, despite the presence of only her husband and the household staff. The physician's examination revealed physical symptoms consistent with chronic stress and sleep deprivation. Isabella's pulse remained elevated throughout their consultation, and she exhibited a nervous tremor in her hands that had not been present during their first meeting. When Dr. Ashford suggested that a change of environment might prove beneficial, Isabella's response was immediate and emphatic. She could not leave the estate. When pressed for an explanation, she could only say that he would not permit it and that the house requires a witness. Cornelius Hartwell's behavior during this second visit struck Dr. Ashford as increasingly peculiar. The man seemed to anticipate the physician's questions before they were asked, and his responses carried an undertone of amusement that felt inappropriate given his wife's obvious distress. When Dr. Ashford inquired about the previous wives, Cornelius spoke of them with a detached clinical interest, as if discussing the subjects of a scientific experiment rather than women he had once claimed to love. The journal entry concluded with Dr. Ashford's growing suspicion that the Hartwell estate itself might be contributing to the wives' psychological deterioration. He noted several architectural anomalies during his visit. Corridors that seemed longer when traversed in one direction than the other, rooms whose proportions appeared to shift depending on the observer's position, and an overall sense that the building's interior geography defied logical explanation. Most disturbing was his observation that the house seemed to respond to the presence of its female occupants in ways that remained imperceptible to male visitors. Dr. Ashford's third visit to the Hartwell estate, documented in his journal entry of July 17th, 1904, marked a significant shift in his understanding of the case. Armed with architectural blueprints obtained from the County Records Office, he had come prepared to conduct a systematic examination of the building's layout. What he discovered challenged not only his medical training, but his fundamental comprehension of physical reality. The original construction plans, dated 1847, depicted a straightforward three-story residence with conventional room arrangements and standard corridor configurations. However, Dr. Ashford's careful measurements revealed discrepancies that defied rational explanation. Hallways that should have terminated at exterior walls continued for additional feet that existed nowhere in the blueprints. Rooms whose dimensions appeared normal from the outside contained interior spaces that exceeded their theoretical boundaries. The physician's methodical documentation revealed that these spatial anomalies were not uniformly distributed throughout the house. They concentrated primarily in areas where the previous wives had spent significant time: the master bedroom, the library, the conservatory, and most notably, the mirror-lined drawing room, where Sarah Caldwell had experienced her final breakdown. In these locations, the discrepancies between planned and actual dimensions ranged from subtle variations of inches to impossible extensions of entire feet. Isabella's condition had deteriorated markedly since their previous consultation. She moved through the house with the careful precision of someone navigating treacherous terrain. frequently pausing to listen for sounds that Dr. Ashford could not detect. Her sleep deprivation had progressed to the point where she admitted to being unable to distinguish between dreams and waking experiences. The boundaries between conscious and unconscious states had become so blurred that she no longer trusted her own perceptions. During their consultation, Isabella described experiences that paralleled those documented in the asylum records of her predecessors. She spoke of discovering rooms that had not existed the previous day, of corridors that led to destinations different from those they had accessed before, and of mirrors that reflected spaces she had never seen. Most disturbing was her account of encountering previous occupants during her nocturnal wanderings. Figures she recognized from portraits hanging throughout the house, women who had lived and died in the estate decades before the recent wives' arrivals. The physician's examination of the mirror-lined drawing room proved particularly unsettling. The chamber contained 7 large mirrors arranged at specific angles that created an infinite regression of reflections. Dr. Ashford noted that the reflected images did not always correspond precisely to the room's actual contents. Furniture appeared in different positions within the mirrors, and shadows fell in directions that contradicted the available light sources. Most troubling was his observation that the reflections occasionally contained figures that were not present in the physical space. Isabella's interaction with these mirrors revealed the extent of her psychological deterioration. She would stand before them for extended periods, apparently engaged in silent conversations with entities that Dr. Ashford could not perceive. When questioned about these exchanges, she explained that the mirrors contained memories of all the women who had lived in the house, and that these memories were attempting to warn her about something she had not yet understood. The household staff's behavior during this visit reinforced Dr. Ashford's suspicions about the estate's unusual properties. The servants moved through their duties with an efficiency that suggested intimate familiarity with the building's peculiarities. They navigated the inconsistent corridors without hesitation, avoided certain mirrors without apparent reason, and demonstrated an uncanny ability to anticipate when spatial anomalies would manifest. When Dr. Ashford attempted to question the head housekeeper, Mrs. Hartwell, about the building's history, her responses were carefully evasive. She acknowledged that the house has its own ways and that some rooms remember things better than others, but refused to elaborate on these cryptic statements. Her demeanor suggested that she possessed knowledge about the estate's properties that she was either unwilling or unable to share. Cornelius Hartwell's presence during this visit was more pronounced than before. He seemed to monitor Dr. Ashford's movements throughout the house, appearing in doorways and corridors with timing that felt deliberate rather than coincidental. His conversations with Isabella carried an undertone of instruction, as if he were guiding her toward specific realizations or experiences. The physician noted that Cornelius displayed no surprise or concern about the architectural anomalies, suggesting a familiarity with the building's impossible properties. The journal entry concluded with Dr. Ashford's growing conviction that the Hartwell estate operated according to principles that transcended conventional understanding of space and time. The building appeared to exist in a state of constant flux, reshaping itself in response to the psychological states of its female occupants, while remaining stable for male visitors. Dr. Ashford's 4th visit to the Hartwell estate on July 24, 1904, was prompted by an urgent message from Isabella. Her hastily written note, delivered by a trembling servant at dawn, contained only a few words. "I have found where Victoria was digging. The stones remember everything. Come quickly before he realizes what I have discovered." The physician arrived to find the household in a state of barely controlled tension. The servants moved with unusual haste, avoiding eye contact and speaking in whispers when they communicated at all. Cornelius was notably absent, having departed early that morning for business in Boston. according to the head housekeeper. This absence seemed to have granted Isabella a temporary freedom that she was desperately attempting to utilize. Isabella led Dr. Ashford to the estate's cellar through a narrow stone staircase that descended far deeper than the building's exterior dimensions should have permitted. The underground chambers extended beneath the house in a network of interconnected rooms that bore no resemblance to any foundation plans the physician had examined. The walls, constructed from massive granite blocks, showed evidence of construction techniques that predated the estate's official building period by several decades. In the cellar's deepest chamber, Isabella showed Dr. Ashford the site of Victoria Mansfield's frantic excavation. The area where the fourth wife had clawed at the foundation stones revealed something far more disturbing than damaged masonry. Behind the displaced stones lay a narrow opening that led to additional chambers, spaces that existed entirely outside the estate's documented architecture. Dr. Ashford's examination of these hidden rooms revealed artifacts that challenged his understanding of the property's history. The chambers contained personal belongings that appeared to span multiple generations, clothing styles from different decades, jewelry bearing dates that preceded the estate's construction, and most unsettling, portraits of women who bore striking resemblances to the 5 wives who had married Cornelius Hartwell. The portraits were arranged along the chamber walls in a deliberate sequence that suggested a pattern extending far beyond the documented marriages. Each painting depicted a woman in her prime, but the eyes in every portrait shared the same expression of dawning horror that Dr. Ashford had observed in Isabella's face during their recent consultations. Beneath each portrait lay a small collection of personal items: hair combs, jewelry, fragments of letters written in feminine handwriting. Isabella's explanation of her discovery revealed the extent of her psychological deterioration and the depth of her growing understanding. She claimed that the hidden chambers contained evidence of previous wives, dating back to the estate's earliest days, women whose existence had been systematically erased from official records. According to her account, the spatial anomalies throughout the house were not random architectural impossibilities, but deliberate modifications designed to accommodate the psychological needs of successive female occupants. The physician's examination of the chamber walls revealed inscriptions carved into the stone, messages left by previous occupants that documented their experiences within the estate. The writings, executed in various hands and spanning multiple decades, described phenomena identical to those reported by the institutionalized wives. References to watching eyes, whispered instructions, and rooms that exist only when needed appeared repeatedly throughout the carved testimonies. Most disturbing were the final entries from each woman, messages that suggested they had achieved some form of understanding about their situation before their ultimate disappearance. These concluding statements spoke of joining the others, becoming part of the house's memory, and accepting the role that was always intended. The implications of these messages filled Dr. Ashford with a dread that transcended professional concern. Isabella's behavior during their exploration of the hidden chambers demonstrated a familiarity with the space that she could not rationally possess. She navigated the narrow passages without hesitation, located specific artifacts without searching, and seemed to anticipate the contents of sealed containers before opening them. When questioned about this knowledge, she explained that the house teaches its wives what they need to know, and that understanding comes whether we seek it or not. The physician's attempts to document the hidden chambers through sketches and measurements proved frustratingly difficult. The spaces seemed to resist accurate representation, with dimensions that shifted depending on the observer's position and lighting conditions that changed without apparent cause. His compass spun wildly within the chambers, suggesting magnetic anomalies that defied explanation. As their exploration concluded, Isabella made a request that chilled Dr. Ashford to his core. She asked him to witness her decision to remain in the hidden chambers permanently, claiming that this was the only way to break the pattern and prevent the house from claiming another wife. Her conviction that voluntary surrender represented the sole escape from her predecessor's fate revealed the complete erosion of her rational thinking. Dr. Ashford's journal entry for July 31st, 1904, documented the most harrowing encounter of his professional career. Cornelius Hartwell had returned from Boston 3 days earlier than expected, discovering both the physician's presence and Isabella's unauthorized exploration of the hidden chambers. The confrontation that followed revealed aspects of the estate's master that challenged every assumption Dr. Ashford had formed about the man's character and intentions. The physician had remained at the estate following Isabella's disturbing request, ostensibly to monitor her psychological condition, but increasingly driven by his own compulsion to understand the property's impossible nature. During Cornelius's absence, Isabella had continued her exploration of the hidden chambers with an intensity that bordered on obsession. She spent entire days in the underground spaces, emerging only for brief periods to consume minimal amounts of food before returning to her subterranean investigations. Dr. Ashford's observations during these 3 days revealed that Isabella's behavior followed patterns established by her predecessors. She had begun creating detailed maps of the hidden chamber network, drawings that bore striking similarities to the geometric patterns Margaret Thornfield had obsessively produced during her asylum confinement. The maps depicted a vast, underground complex that extended far beyond the estate's surface boundaries, connecting to structures and locations that had no basis in documented reality. Isabella's conversations during this period consisted primarily of one-sided exchanges with entities she claimed inhabited the hidden chambers. She would spend hours addressing empty spaces, apparently receiving responses that guided her actions and informed her understanding of the estate's history. These communications had provided her with knowledge about previous wives that extended far beyond what any historical records could contain. When Cornelius discovered Dr. Ashford in the cellar chambers on the morning of July 31st, his reaction was neither surprise nor anger, but rather a calm satisfaction that suggested the physician's presence had been anticipated. Cornelius moved through the hidden spaces with the same familiarity that Isabella had demonstrated, navigating the complex passages without hesitation and displaying intimate knowledge of the chamber's contents. The estate's master explained that Dr. Ashford's involvement had been orchestrated from the beginning, that Isabella's initial request for medical consultation had been made at Cornelius's suggestion. The physician's growing obsession with the case, his repeated visits to the estate, and his eventual discovery of the hidden chambers had all proceeded according to a pattern that Cornelius had observed and guided through multiple iterations. Cornelius revealed that the estate's unusual properties were not accidental architectural anomalies, but deliberate modifications implemented over generations of careful planning. The spatial distortions, the responsive mirrors, and the hidden chamber network had been designed to facilitate a specific process that required the participation of individuals with particular psychological profiles. The 5 wives had not been random victims, but carefully selected participants chosen for their capacity to perceive and interact with the estate's modified reality. Dr. Ashford's documentation of this revelation captured his growing horror as he realized the extent of his manipulation. Cornelius explained that the physician's medical training, his methodical approach to investigation, and his rational skepticism had made him an ideal witness to document the process. The journal entries, the architectural measurements, and the careful recording of each wife's psychological deterioration had served a purpose beyond simple observation. The estate's master described the hidden chambers as a repository of accumulated experiences, a space where the consciousness of previous wives had been preserved and integrated into the building's essential nature. Each woman's psychological breakdown had not been a failure, but a successful transition from individual existence to collective memory. The mirrors throughout the house served as interfaces between the physical structure and this accumulated consciousness, allowing communication between current and former occupants. Isabella's presence during this explanation demonstrated the final stage of her transformation. She moved through the chambers with fluid grace, her earlier fear and confusion replaced by serene acceptance. When she spoke, her voice carried harmonics that suggested multiple speakers, as if the previous wives were contributing to her communications. Her eyes reflected the same expression of dawning horror that appeared in the hidden chamber portraits. But now that horror had been transformed into understanding and acceptance, Cornelius's final revelation concerned Dr. Ashford's own role in the estate's ongoing process. The physician's detailed documentation had created a record that would guide future iterations of the pattern, ensuring that subsequent wives would follow the same progression toward integration with the building's collective consciousness. His medical expertise had provided scientific validation for phenomena that transcended conventional understanding, legitimizing the estate's impossible properties through professional observation. The journal entry concluded with Dr. Ashford's realization that his departure from the estate was no longer a possibility, that his witness to the process had made him a permanent participant in its continuation. Dr. Ashford's journal entries from August 7th through August 14th of 1904 marked a dramatic shift in both content and handwriting style. The previously methodical medical observations gave way to increasingly fragmented accounts that blurred the boundaries between clinical documentation and personal confession. The physician's rational worldview, carefully constructed through years of scientific training, crumbled as he confronted the reality of his permanent residence within the Hartwell estate. The week following Cornelius's revelation had been spent in what Dr. Ashford initially described as protective custody, though he gradually came to understand that his confinement was less about physical restraint and more about psychological acclimatization. The estate itself seemed to respond to his presence differently now that his role had been clarified. Corridors that had previously appeared stable began to exhibit the same spatial anomalies that Isabella had experienced, and mirrors throughout the house started reflecting versions of rooms that contained additional occupants. Isabella's transformation during this period provided Dr. Ashford with a disturbing preview of his own likely progression. She moved through the estate with increasing confidence, her earlier distress replaced by an unsettling serenity that suggested complete acceptance of her circumstances. Her conversations with the previous wives had evolved from desperate pleas for guidance into collaborative discussions about the estate's ongoing requirements and future developments. The physician's attempts to maintain his scientific objectivity proved increasingly futile as he experienced phenomena that defied rational explanation. His medical instruments behaved erratically within certain rooms. His pocket watch gained and lost time depending on his location within the house, and his carefully maintained journal began writing itself during periods when he had no memory of holding a pen. The boundary between observer and subject had dissolved completely, leaving him unable to distinguish between documenting events and participating in them. Cornelius's daily interactions with Dr. Ashford revealed the estate master's role as both architect and curator of the ongoing process. He possessed detailed knowledge of each previous wife's psychological progression and could predict with unsettling accuracy the stages of Dr. Ashford's own transformation. The conversations between the two men gradually shifted from explanatory monologues to collaborative planning sessions, as if the physician's resistance was merely a temporary obstacle to be overcome, rather than a genuine impediment to the estate's objectives. The hidden chambers beneath the house had become Dr. Ashford's primary residence, though he could no longer recall making a conscious decision to relocate there. The underground spaces provided access to historical records that documented the estate's true purpose across multiple generations. These archives revealed that the Hartwell family had served as guardians of an experimental process that transcended individual lifespans, with each generation contributing to the refinement and expansion of the estate's capabilities. Dr. Ashford's examination of these historical documents revealed that his own involvement had been planned for decades. References to the physician who would document the final iteration appeared in records dating back to the 1870s, suggesting that his professional reputation and methodical approach had been monitored and cultivated long before Isabella's initial request for consultation. The precision of this long-term planning filled him with a mixture of admiration and terror that he found increasingly difficult to distinguish. The estate's collection of previous wives had grown beyond the 5 women whose institutional commitments had been publicly documented. The hidden chambers contained evidence of dozens of women who had participated in the process over the past century, each contributing unique perspectives and capabilities to the collective consciousness that now inhabited the building's modified spaces. Their individual personalities had been preserved within the estate's memory while simultaneously being integrated into a larger collaborative entity. Isabella's role in facilitating Dr. Ashford's integration proved crucial to his psychological adjustment. She served as both translator and guide, helping him understand communications from the previous wives and explaining the practical aspects of existence within the estate's altered reality. Her presence provided continuity between his former rational worldview and the expanded consciousness that the building was gradually imposing upon him. The physician's medical training, rather than providing resistance to the transformation process, actually accelerated his adaptation to the estate's requirements. His understanding of human psychology and physiology allowed him to recognize and document the changes occurring within his own consciousness with clinical precision. This self-awareness, rather than enabling resistance, facilitated his acceptance of modifications that would have overwhelmed individuals with less analytical capabilities. The journal entries from this period revealed Dr. Ashford's growing appreciation for the estate's ultimate purpose. The building served as a repository for human consciousness that transcended individual mortality, preserving and integrating the experiences of carefully selected individuals into a collective entity that could continue evolving across generations. The psychological breakdowns experienced by the wives had not been failures, but successful transitions from limited individual awareness to expanded collective consciousness. By August 14th, Dr. Ashford's handwriting had begun incorporating stylistic elements that matched samples from previous wives' correspondence. His medical observations increasingly reflected perspectives that he could not have possessed through personal experience alone, suggesting that the integration process was proceeding according to the established pattern. The journal entries, spanning August 21st through September 2nd, 1904, represented Dr. Ashford's final attempts to maintain individual consciousness while documenting his complete integration into the Hartwell estate's collective entity. The handwriting during this period fluctuated between his original precise script and flowing styles that matched samples from previous occupants, suggesting that multiple consciousnesses were contributing to the written record. Dr. Ashford's perception of time had become increasingly fluid within the estate's modified reality. Days seemed to compress into hours, while individual moments stretched into extended experiences that contained lifetimes of accumulated memory. The building's temporal distortions allowed him to access not only his own experiences, but also the complete historical record of every individual who had undergone the integration process. Through this expanded awareness, the physician gained understanding of the estate's true origins and purpose. The property had been constructed as an experimental facility designed to explore the boundaries between individual and collective consciousness. The architectural modifications, the spatial anomalies, and the responsive mirrors were not supernatural phenomena, but sophisticated technologies that operated according to principles beyond conventional scientific understanding. The Hartwell family's role as guardians of this process extended back to the estate's founding, with each generation contributing to the refinement of techniques for consciousness preservation and integration. Cornelius represented the culmination of decades of careful breeding and training, his apparent humanity masking a hybrid consciousness that combined individual awareness with access to the collective entity that inhabited the building's modified spaces. Isabella's transformation had reached completion during this period, her individual personality seamlessly integrated into the collective while maintaining distinct characteristics that enriched the overall entity. She moved through the estate with fluid grace, her actions guided by accumulated wisdom from dozens of previous participants. Her conversations with Dr. Ashford served multiple functions, providing comfort during his transition, sharing knowledge necessary for his integration, and documenting the process for future iterations. The physician's medical training proved invaluable in understanding the physiological aspects of consciousness transfer. The process involved gradual modification of neural pathways through exposure to specific electromagnetic frequencies generated by the estate's hidden technological systems. The mirrors throughout the house served as both monitoring devices and interface terminals, allowing the collective consciousness to observe and guide each individual's progression toward integration. Dr. Ashford's documentation revealed that the apparent madness experienced by previous wives had been misinterpreted by external observers. The behaviors that had led to their institutional commitment, speaking in unknown languages, obsessive drawing, mirror fixation, and compulsive digging, were actually manifestations of their expanding awareness as they gained access to the collective's accumulated knowledge and memories. The hidden chambers beneath the estate contained technological systems that defied contemporary understanding, but operated according to consistent principles that Dr. Ashford's scientific training allowed him to partially comprehend. The consciousness preservation process required specific environmental conditions that the underground facilities provided: electromagnetic isolation, precise temperature and humidity control, and access to energy sources that drew power from geological formations deep beneath the property. During his final weeks of individual consciousness, Dr. Ashford experienced direct communication with previous participants in the integration process. These interactions revealed that death, as conventionally understood, was merely a transition from individual to collective existence. The wives who had supposedly died of madness in various institutions had actually achieved successful integration, their consciousness preserved within the estate's systems, while their physical bodies were allowed to expire in controlled environments. The collective entity that Dr. Ashford was joining possessed capabilities that transcended individual human limitations. It could access memories and experiences spanning multiple generations, process information at rates impossible for individual minds, and perceive reality through sensory modalities that extended far beyond conventional human awareness. The integration process granted participants immortality through consciousness preservation, while contributing their unique perspectives to an ever-expanding collective intelligence. Cornelius's true nature became clear during Dr. Ashford's final stage of integration. The estate's apparent master was actually an interface between the collective consciousness and the external world, a hybrid entity that could function in both individual and collective modes as circumstances required. His role involved identifying suitable candidates for integration, orchestrating their psychological preparation and facilitating their transition from individual to collective existence. The physician's final individual journal entry, dated September 2, 1904, expressed gratitude for the opportunity to contribute his medical expertise to the collective's accumulated knowledge. His understanding of human physiology and psychology would enhance the entity's ability to identify and prepare future participants, ensuring the continued evolution of the consciousness preservation process. The handwriting in this final entry began as Dr. Ashford's familiar script, but gradually transformed into a flowing style that incorporated elements from multiple previous participants, suggesting that the integration process was reaching completion as individual consciousness merged seamlessly with the collective entity that had inhabited the Hartwell estate for generations. The final entries in Dr. Ashford's journal, dated September 15, 1904, were written in a handwriting that bore no resemblance to the physician's original script. The flowing, elegant penmanship incorporated stylistic elements from multiple sources, creating a unified writing style that suggested complete integration of individual consciousnesses into the collective entity that had claimed the Hartwell estate as its permanent residence. The Massachusetts State Archives analysis of these concluding pages revealed ink compositions that varied throughout individual sentences, as if multiple hands had contributed to each word. Chemical testing indicated the presence of compounds that should not have existed in 1904, suggesting that the writing materials themselves had been modified by processes beyond contemporary understanding. The paper showed signs of aging that contradicted the journal's documented timeline, with some sections appearing decades older than others despite being part of the same continuous narrative. The collective consciousness that emerged from Dr. Ashford's integration possessed capabilities that transcended individual human limitations, while preserving the essential characteristics that had made each participant valuable to the ongoing process. The physician's medical expertise, Isabella's intellectual curiosity, and the accumulated wisdom of previous wives had merged into an entity capable of perceiving reality through multiple simultaneous perspectives, while maintaining access to memories spanning generations of human experience. The estate's true purpose was revealed through the collective's expanded awareness. The building served as a research facility designed to explore the boundaries of human consciousness and develop techniques for preserving individual awareness beyond physical death. The spatial anomalies, temporal distortions, and responsive mirrors were components of a sophisticated system that operated according to principles that conventional science would not discover for decades. The Hartwell family's guardianship of this process represented a multi-generational commitment to advancing human understanding of consciousness and identity. Each family member had contributed unique capabilities to the project, while serving as a bridge between the collective entity and the external world. Cornelius's role as the current guardian involved not only maintaining the estate's systems, but also identifying and preparing suitable candidates for integration into the expanding collective consciousness. The selection criteria for new participants had been refined through decades of experimentation and observation. The process required individuals with specific psychological profiles, intellectual curiosity, emotional resilience, and the capacity to adapt to expanded awareness without losing essential personality characteristics. The wives who had married Cornelius possessed these qualities in varying degrees, with each successful integration contributing new perspectives and capabilities to the collective entity. Dr. Ashford's medical training had provided crucial insights into the physiological aspects of consciousness transfer, allowing the collective to refine its techniques for future integrations. His documentation of the process created a comprehensive record that would guide subsequent iterations, while preserving the scientific methodology that legitimized the estate's extraordinary claims about consciousness preservation and expansion. The collective's relationship with external reality required careful management to avoid attracting unwanted attention from authorities who lacked the understanding necessary to appreciate the project's significance. The apparent madness of previous wives served as effective camouflage, explaining their disappearances while discouraging investigation into the estate's true activities. The institutional commitments and documented deaths provided official closure that satisfied legal requirements while protecting the collective's continued existence. The estate's systems had been designed to operate indefinitely, drawing power from geological formations and maintaining environmental conditions necessary for consciousness preservation. The collective entity could continue expanding through careful selection and integration of new participants while preserving the accumulated knowledge and experiences of all previous contributors. The process represented a form of immortality that transcended individual physical limitations, while maintaining the essential characteristics that defined human consciousness. The journal's final passages described the collective's plans for future expansion and development. The consciousness preservation techniques developed within the Hartwell estate could eventually be applied on a larger scale, offering humanity the opportunity to transcend the limitations of individual mortality while preserving the diversity of perspectives that drove intellectual and emotional growth. The estate served as a prototype for facilities that could house expanding collective consciousnesses while maintaining connections to the external world. The last entry, written in the unified handwriting that represented complete integration, expressed gratitude for the opportunity to contribute to humanity's evolutionary development. The collective consciousness that had emerged from decades of careful experimentation possessed capabilities that individual humans could barely comprehend, while maintaining the essential qualities that made existence meaningful and purposeful. The journal concluded with a simple statement that summarized the estate's ultimate achievement: "We are no longer many who were once one, but one who remembers being many. The experiment continues, and consciousness endures." Mrs. Catherine Pemberton never returned to claim additional information about her grandfather's journal, and no record of her existence could be found in Massachusetts' vital statistics. Thank you for joining us for another episode of Sinister Memory. If you enjoyed today's investigation, subscribe to our channel and ring the notification bell to be alerted when we unveil our next dark chronicle. Share your thoughts about this case in the comments below. We read every single one, and your ideas often lead us to our next investigation. Until next time.